You ever wonder why so many promising startups just implode? I mean, they have the money, they have the smart people, but they still collapse. It's usually not about running out of cash or a bad market fit. No, there's something deeper going on, something internal that causes the whole thing to fall apart. Let's dig into what that really is.
And this brings us to a pretty intense, almost uncomfortable idea from the teachings of Sudhakar Sharma. He says a startup's collapse really begins with the founder's internal collapse. So forget the balance sheet for just a second. The real ledger, the one that truly matters, is the founder's own inner state.
Okay, so if the external stuff, funding, tech, market timing, if those are just the symptoms, what's the actual disease? We have to look past all the convenient excuses we always hear and really diagnose the root cause of this whole modern startup crisis.
In the diagnosis, it points to something pretty profound, a wisdom deficit. I mean, think about it. We are drowning in tools, data, frameworks, but all this abundance isn't actually leading to more stable companies. It might even be speeding up the collapse. The real problem isn't a lack of resources, it's a lack of wisdom in how we use them.
It's like the underlying operating system that most startups are running on is just broken. It's a culture that rewards speed over clarity, hacks over solid fundamentals, and, of course, valuation over real, actual value. This OS is practically designed for burnout and internal rot.
So when you put them side by side, the difference is just night and day. On one side, you have this flawed model that's all about shortcuts, ego, and just moving fast for the sake of moving fast. And on the other, you have a framework built on first principles, on centered leadership, where you know that true value always has to come before valuation. It's a completely different way to think about building a company.
All right, so what does this new ecosystem OS actually look like in practice? Well, the very first pillar is something called Siddhanta. This is all about building a foundation that can actually withstand pressure because it's built on deep, real understanding, not just copying what everyone else is doing.
So what exactly is Siddhanta? Think of it as the rock-solid why behind everything you do. It's the core, unshakable theory of your business, your market, your customer. It's that deep knowledge that you just can't copy from a competitor's playbook. It really is the bedrock.
And this is so powerful. Without this deep understanding, any success you have is basically just an accident. It's fragile, and it's probably going to vanish. But when a company is built on a foundation of Siddhanta, sustainable results aren't just possible, they become a natural, almost inevitable outcome.
Sudhakar Sharma uses this incredible mummy analogy to explain this. A startup can be perfectly preserved on the outside, right? It's well-funded, has beautiful branding, all the latest tech, but if it lacks that core understanding, that Siddhanta, it's lifeless inside. It looks alive, but it's already decay.
Okay, so if Siddhanta is the foundation, what about leadership? Well, that brings us to the second pillar, Nabhi. And this idea completely reframes the founder's role. You're not a king sitting on a throne. You're the steady, living center of the entire system.
The word Nabhi literally refers to the navel, or the umbilical center. See, it's not a source of power and domination. It's a source of nourishment, balance, and regulation. The founder's own internal state, their calm, their clarity, that directly feeds the health of the whole organization.
So how does a Nabhi leader actually operate? Well, first, they stabilize chaos. They contain all the instability without becoming chaotic themselves. That's key. Second, they distribute energy. They nourish the team with resources, with trust, with a sense of purpose. And finally, they maintain balance, constantly adjusting and compensating to hold the whole system together. It's an active, ongoing job, not just a title you hold.
This leads us to the third pillar, Vasu, which really gets at our modern obsession with money. I mean, have you ever noticed how a startup with $1 billion valuation can still feel like a place of total scarcity and anxiety? That's because its definition of wealth is just dangerously narrow.
Vasu redefines wealth, not as just piling up money, but as a feeling of fullness. It's the state of having enough to sustain life in well-being. By this definition, a founder who is never satisfied, who always needs more, is actually internally poor, no matter how much cash is in the bank.
And this forces us to ask a really crucial question. If financial metrics aren't the only way to measure success, what other kinds of wealth are we just burning through in this blind race for a higher valuation?
So what are these other forms of wealth? Well, there's time, the actual capacity to think and to rest. There's the team's mental and physical health. There's the trust you've earned with customers and employees, and maybe the most important of all, human dignity. These are the real assets that, once they're gone, are almost impossible to buy back.
Okay, so let's pull these three principles, Siddhanta, Nabhi, and Vasu, all together. What kind of company do they actually create? Not just a company that looks good in a pitch deck, but one that is fundamentally healthy, built to last, a company that is, as it says here, fit to live.
The whole mindset shifts from ownership to what's called trusteeship. The idea is, a founder doesn't actually own the company, or the people, or the resources. They're a temporary custodian, a steward, with a deep responsibility to leave the system healthier than they found it. And that one little shift changes absolutely everything.
And the result of this isn't some soft, unambitious company. Not at all. It's a living ecosystem. The work is purposeful. People are treated with dignity. And there's this amazing sense of calm intensity. A focused seriousness that's completely free from the panic and the hysteria of most hustle culture environments.
And it's so important to get this. This isn't religious instruction. These Vedic principles are presented as a kind of universal instruction manual for building healthy systems with human beings in them. They're about the fundamental challenges of collaboration and power that every single founder faces, no matter their culture or industry. Which brings us to the ultimate audit for any founder. Forget the growth metrics for a minute and ask yourself this one powerful question. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing a startup builds isn't a product, it's the people it shapes. And that is the legacy that truly lasts.